All right then, welcome back to the Foxhole. Time for season 2 of AfterShoX with your faithful host Ken Harlan, coming to you live from Eagles Nest 2, Studio B on a terrific Tuesday. Yeah, folks, it's time for the second round of all of this. Season 1 was more of a proof of concept. Could we go from doing an audio podcast to having a companion video web series? So now that we're at the starting line for season 2, it's time to get rock and rolling. Definitely take things up a level from what we did in season 1, because we kind of experimented and whatnot. Anyway, let's cut to the la AfterShoX 033 coming to you. Well, like I said, it's pretty psyched to be in a position to kick off season 2. It's gonna be a lot of fun. So we hope to get some more guests. Hope we span some of our topics. You can see I'm all decked out. 100 days away from the World Cup. FS1 was really crazy. Obviously, Fox being the broadcast partner for the U.S., so their shows, it was kind of a joke to see these guys know what the hell they're talking about. But given the beautiful game life, the love, we love that. But as far as episode 33 goes, we'll get back to what's going on with the pitch a little bit later. But let's start off with the hardwood, because there's a lot of things going on there. So we'll just call this, wow, hoop dreams, know nothings, lemon pepper wings. Yeah. Okay, so a big game on Sunday. Yeah. The Garden, rematch of the Emirates Cup final, which the Knicks, who we kind of were saying bad things about, put on quite a show, dispatching the Spurs, who everybody wants to anoint as a real contender. So, I don't know. What should we believe coming out of this particular game? That the Knicks always show up in the Garden in a big primetime affair, all the eyeballs watching Celebrity Row, or perhaps the skeptics out there who think maybe the Spurs are not quite ready to ascend yet. Wimby's soaring, but he's not at the point where he's in the stratosphere. A lot of these things can be true. The Knicks have won 14 out of 18, playing very good after that aforementioned slump they were in. And with the Spurs, there is a lot of sense that you have to be able to, crawl, walk, then run. And they've got some guys on that team like De'Aaron Fox, Harrison Barnes. So it's not like everybody's wet behind the ears. So yeah, I think there's a little bit of both. I'm not sure what to make of the Knicks. Anybody that's peaking right now, you wonder, or is it happening too early? Are they going to sustain injuries? Nonetheless, it was pretty cool. Anytime there's a big game on a Sunday, especially coming from the Garden with all eyeballs, always good stuff there. And, the Knicks twice kind of putting the Spurs on notice, like saying, not so fast, young men. What else do we got? Okay. This whole thing with the Red Hawks, Miami of Ohio. Sure, you've heard by now, you have, or maybe not, but Bruce Pearl, who left Auburn and basically let his Nepo baby son take the job. Whatever the case may be. Keep in mind, his son's Tigers are 15 and 14, and he's running around telling anybody who will listen about how weak Miami of Ohio's schedule is, and that there are probably 68 teams better than them, and as far as teams from the Mid-American Conference. Well, Bruce, I get you being basketball's version of Deion Sanders, as many people said on TV today. Maybe a little bit of a stretch there, but I get waving the pom poms to try to get the team that you coached, and you obviously want to justify the school hiring your son to be your replacement. But 15 and 14, come on, man. And they were doing the stats earlier as far as teams that are one or two games over 500 making the tournament. And I do believe that even if Miami, Ohio should lose this weekend or in the conference tournament, when you get close to 29, 30 wins, and I know Akron's in that conference as well, and they're very good, let them in. That's why we have 68 teams. You know, if this were the college football playoff, even at 24, you might have a point. But this isn't the college football playoff, and as many people commented today, that's why the March Madness, the tournament, why it has such grand appeal, because there are Cinderella stories. There are stories as opposed to stacking up with a bunch of blue bloods, especially when in this NIL infused era, you probably got some teams that are overrated. In fact, I heard somebody on TV today say that they feel that the SEC as a basketball conference has fallen behind the Big 12 and the Big 10. And obviously the ACC. So, anyway, I think it's a true reality check for all of this madness, is what I'm truly seeing here. We've gotten so caught up in our brands, to the point where, I mean, like I said, on the one hand, I get it, it's your son. But as a basketball talking head, as someone knows better, come on, no 15 and 14 team that's been poo in conference. You win your conference tournament, we can have this conversation. But otherwise, just because you're in the SEC, especially when people are downselling it right now, stop with it. Me and the Red Hawks, they fought themselves out of a lot of jams. They've been a great story all season. Okay. Speaking of true reality checks, this Chad Baker Mazzara story, cat from USC, took like a tumble, took himself out of the game, and then went and sat, in the stands kind of adjacent to his team with his homies and some chick. Dude's 26 for one. Y'all know what I think about these mofos that are trying to play till they're 30. And this became another reality check of how stupid and how out of control this is. I'm not sure, what the story with him and the coach. And there's the whole thing with Gilbert Arenas' son coming back and taking some of his touches. I'm like, wait a minute. This guy's 26, acting like a bitch. Sorry for my language, folks, but it's total bitch to walk away from your team when you're at 26 and you're supposed to be mature. I mean, we're just out here letting these clowns just grab bags of money and do whatever the F they want. And we're so lusted for whatever glory there is, and especially at SC basketball, how much glory are you really going to get? This ain't Cheryl Miller's USC, right? Or homegirl that's out right now for the ladies. So, yeah, the whole thing just is disgusting. Let me move on from that real quick. Especially when you have a story like Connecticut, 11 times hitting perfection, 31-0, and again, let's have some real talk about this particular team. Because, you in an era where you had a very dominant Oklahoma Sooners women's softball team dynasty, what UNC and soccer and lacrosse have done, their ladies' teams, very dominant as well. You always wonder why they don't get the kind of love. We made this big deal about the United States women's hockey team only because the whole thing with the men and Trump buddy up to them. The Aces have been dominant pretty much in this era. Nobody cares. Maybe different if the Indiana Fever become dominant, but that hasn't happened yet. And what's going on over there, which I'll get to in a second. Yeah, it's just weird to me. I mean, if a men's team had gone perfect 11 times within in the modern era, and we'll just say we call the modern era now the turn of the century, because that's where most of those championships that Gino's teams have won, and countless amount of badasses who've played in the WNBA and internationally for Team USA. But 11 times perfect, and we're just like, okay, pass the chili cheese fries and the wings. It was so blasé about it, and that's weird. You probably got an idea where I'm going with this along the way, but we're not going to get there in this episode. I'm just throwing it out there right now, just to marinate this one. That you have a team, if this is their 11th time hitting perfection, and we're like, So, I don't know, this idea about the priorities or how the hierarchy is stacked, I think is pretty obvious when you look at that particular stat. And we still have people crying in their beers about UNLV getting beat by Duke when they were this close to being the last men's team to really, okay, you can go undefeated. And that was a long time ago. Indiana, the last time men's team to do it, what was that, like 1976, 1977? Yeah. Oh, excuse me. Okay, we're gonna go slightly over in this segment, but that's okay. Over the weekend I was watching Year of the Scab, which has a lot of meaning for me, being a Commanders fan, as you probably know, and that being about the Commanders and their replacement team in 1987, which helped them win the '88 Super Bowl. But I thought about the WNBA in this context. And I was watching, once again, give a shout out to Rachel Demita. I think her podcast is pretty cool in terms of, even if you hate women's sports, she's pretty spot on and doesn't try to overload you in terms of her opinions. But she's not afraid of the gatekeepers and the weirdos that come at her with the arrows, slings, and bottles and whatever else they can come up with. Anyway, it's interesting, right? Because what she said today, both sides are getting closer. Right? Hey, we'll concede you housing, or we'll back up on this. But it seems like the revenue sharing and the salary cap, and I'm just sitting here thinking, well, there's certain people are going to be making millions, and what the average salary is supposed to go up to be about $500K for a 40-game season without Caitlin Clark, nobody gave a shit about. I think at some point, I'm hearing, but I haven't seen anything yet to validate this. But from certain folks, it's really starting to come along racial lines. Gee, what a surprise that is in 2026. But, so, I'll just leave it to your imagination. But certain folks that want to stay militant, and certain folks are like, yeah, we did what we needed to get a bag and better accommodations to make our situation, so we don't really piss off our fans. And when you start whining about your living expenses, especially if your average salary is about to be bumped up to $500,000, when the average salary for everybody else is between $50,000 and $65,000, I believe. So anyway, I think it's interesting some of the things that Rachel is bringing up, though, because I thought pretty sure we were getting close to this just being a done deal. Because isn't like next week the target date for having the season intact, which is I think like March 9th or 10th is what they were talking about, and everybody's still playing tough. I like that, you do, for the most part. They have muted the wackos, even though what's her name? Was it Natasha Cloud who was speaking out But even her words, we're not this. I want to blow the mother effer up talk, but still kind of maintaining their position that they haven't quite got what they want, because it is all about pay us what you owe us. People are like sitting there like, oh, he's still talking about the WNBA. It's fascinating, right? Because they're that weird sport that has a combination of simps and other hoop weirdos, and not to mention the Caitlin Clark effect, the whole cult, who's making this all happen, by the way. And there was just, it's an intriguing story, and I get folks like going, yeah, nobody cares. That's not true. It is a big story, and if they somehow blow this opportunity, this will be one of the more compelling stories over the next half decade or so. So, anyways, we're off and cooking. When we return, maybe we'll talk a little football, because you know how it is. Football universe, 365, 24/7 in most places. All right, we'll be back momentarily. All right, welcome back to the Foxhole season premiere of AfterShoX season 2, 0233 for you folks keeping score at home. Yeah, we're 33 episodes into this, having all sorts of fun. Only getting started as far as that is concerned. All right, so let's see, what else do we have here? We're gonna call this segment. Let's give it. Can we get a Narcan script for all the football junkies out there? I mean, it's hoops de jour. Right. Soccer globally, domestically, blowing up. Baseball and the World Baseball Classic getting ready to spawn a spring of all sorts of scintillating fun. And yet, the football junkies managed to bully their way. It's like watching TV today. Except FS1, except we're given 100 days from the World Cup. But FS1 dedicating big chunks of its program today to pumping up the World Cup, 100 days away. But nonetheless, you never get too far away from the football albatross. Even in a show like that where you're really trying hard to act like you care about the beautiful game of life, and yet we're always maneuvering back. And, give the NFL this. For the most part, there's probably a window after the draft where things dry up. But the time period from the Super Bowl till the league year starts in March. Oof, having trouble with the words here. But the time for the Super Bowl till the league year starts in March, they do a good job of staying in the sports news cycle. And this week being no different, with the tags, trades, releases, cap maneuvering. I mean, the needles plunge so deep into our veins. I'm like, we eat Narcan because we OD on this stuff so much. And there's many things just happening today that we'll probably touch on in great detail on this week's Foxtrotting in a Foxhole that'll be out Friday. And that's probably like episode 305. But the Cards releasing Kyler. Be interesting to see where he goes. Trey Hendrickson basically being told we're not retaining your services, and now he's an unrestricted free agent. Still don't know what's going on with Tua. The Colts putting the transition tag on Danny Dimes. Yeah, transition tag. I had to look up what that is. I had forgotten because it's so rarely invoked. But that just gives the teams basically some time to work out something because they don't like using it. At this point, it might be a 1-year deal for like 37.7, basically 38 mil. like for Danny Diamond, I'm like, but he wants a little more stability, whatever that means. When somebody cuts you a check for 38 million, and what you're still bringing home a pretty good chunk of change, even after Uncle Sugar gets his cut. And by the way, you see that where Mississippi is talking about NI student athletes that get NIL, they want to make it so they're not subjected to taxes. And we lost our minds to, yeah, and we lost our minds on that level. And all you stiffs are like, oh, yeah, I waited my whole life for Ole Miss to have a chance to win a natty when I'm busting my ass off, giving Uncle Sugar and Mr. State Man all kinds of money, that you're going to let these privileged F's get a pass? All because we want to fill our lust and our glory and feed into our narcissism that our school winning a natty in football, basketball, or college baseball, women's softball, is that important? I mean, I've seen a lot of stupid ass shit this week. And I'm telling you, that is definitely up there. And we're allowing it to happen and just kind of shrugging our shoulders, which is another absurd thing. But anyway, what else do we have on the gridiron? I saw this thing on social media, and I don't know if it's AI. I tend to believe it because in this madness that I'm talking about, this like palatial mansion that Lincoln Riley, or Skip Bayless says, stinking Lincoln Riley, has down there somewhere with, I don't know, whether it's Palos Verdes or Palisades or somewhere like that. But homie's living large. And I sit there thinking to myself, man, other than Caleb winning the Heisman Trophy, has there been anything really memorable about his tenure? Maybe a tight game where you squeak by Dion's Paper Tiger Colorado squad, but every time you play the Ducks, kind of like you're their bitch. And that ain't no joke. I'm thinking 2026, if we get another subpar season, you got to think the Cardigans, as we call their alumni, you got to think whatever, they're going to have to pass the hat around. I think in this day and age with, an Indiana sending I don't know, one of those, since we are at war right now, bunker busters across the football universe. I mean, pretty much shook off every floor in the basement by winning the natty. And this guy's living in a $17 million pad out in Palisades or wherever with that kind of slop. As a little kid said to Shoeless Joe, say it ain't so, Joe. Say it ain't so. Yeah, I don't really think he can survive another subpar year in Los Angeles. But then again, after seeing the Beavers tell Wayne Tinkle to hit the bricks, as I said on episode 303, I'm surprised that Oregon is showing this kind of patience with Dana Altman. And yeah, I'm going to say Dana's a little bit more decorated. There have been some amazing things that have happened on his watch, so he might have bought a little more credibility than Lincoln Riley has in my eyes right now. But I still think the sample size is bigger in this win now, lustful mentality that we have. Especially, as I always say, Phil ain't getting younger. When he just turned 88 the last week. Yes, Phil Knight. Yeah, I know. Where was I going with that? Yeah, I know. Sometimes these bullet points have a way of spinning themselves into 2 or 3 different directions and alleys or something like that. Okay, here's another one for this wacky world of ours that we're in right now in the 2020s. The whole thing with J.J. McCarthy. You go from winning a natty, the Vikings maneuver to get you. You miss year one. You have some amazing moments, but you have a lot of really bad moments too in year two with Minnesota. And, the internet and its desire for clicks, you never know what to believe. But it seems like there are some credible voices that the folks in Minnesota, now that they've gotten rid of their GM, they're more than down with having a competition for QB1. Because as we've pointed out on our platforms, and many others have as well, this is a team that has a window right now to compete, and it's not really happening. Of course, there's people out there talking crazy, like bringing Aaron Rodgers to Minnesota so he can complete the whole weird Brett Favre ghosting thing, bringing Kirk Cousins back, the aforementioned Kyler Murray, who's available right now. And I'm sitting here with my head shaking like, well, wait a minute. Because remember Jim Harbaugh? According to Colin Cowherd, the greatest coach ever. Oh, God, he's going to be such an incredible pro and all this other stuff. I don't know what to think about this guy other than or win now and you have to produce immediately. Unlike the old days where you could have a little rust, because we all know the story that Peyton, that wasn't great. We ended up loving Peyton. Peyton had him and his brother have so many damn commercials, and they're like the Kennedys of football. Sorry, Sanders family. Sucks. But am I lying? So yeah, it just mirrors this real culture of impatience that we are, I don't know, we're feeding when, yeah, the kid's kind of banged up, but so is Jayden Daniels. But you don't hear anybody in D.C. saying, oh yeah, we're ready to move on. I don't know. It's such a mixed bag. But from what I've seen just with the eye test, he's a young quarterback with a good coordinator going through the growing pains that usually happens. Maybe one thing, with these guys like, a Bo Nix or Cam Ward, and even he struggled, and Michael Penix, who can't stay healthy, these guys who've been in college, since the Obama era. I don't know, you tell me. In a world where Malik Willis and Jimmy G are actually being spoken of as viable candidates. Let me leave you with this one before we go on to something else. How about the heartbeat from Boulder to Cleveland? Like I said, the football, even when it's not in the season, the gift that always keeps giving. And when it comes to Dion and the Shador sexuals and everything that's going on with that program in Boulder, which reverberates to Cleveland, quite a week there. Unfortunately, the tragic story of the quarterback who passed away, car crash, another one of these kids speeding, but we're not going to pass judgment on that. More to say condolences to his family. Yeah. Well, I lost my train of thought here. Let me refocus. But everything going on there, because I know they're starting spring ball. I told you, I think, in episode 303 about Warren Sapp leaving after he didn't get the defensive coordinator job. Like somebody's going to give that guy a DC job. But then again, leave it to the race baiters, the Hustlers Alliance. Okay, wait a minute, but Deion's your boy. You can't whine about people getting passed over. Anyways. And then with Cleveland, this whole thing with what's going to happen with Shador. All this talk about, hey, maybe they want to take a look at Ty Simpson or Deshaun Watson, who they owe a lot of money to, who's obviously still in play because Might as well, if you're gonna pay him that money, you might as well see if he can get back to, as I said previously on the platforms, even 40% of what it used to be. Can probably compete with Dylan Gabriel and Shador. But the shovels are in the ground for the barn. That's an interesting thing too, because whatever Jimmy Haslam is doing wrong, and that's a lot, that he's getting a modern stadium built, another revenue maker, so he can continue to stumble and bumble. Because as much shit as people talk about in Cleveland about how they're pissed off about where the stadium's being built, you can guarantee the dog pound is going to be packed when the new dog pound, or the barn as I call it. And imagine, if Shador does stick. I don't know when it comes to this kid. It's like this two-headed monster, right? One half wants the circus, the other half kind of doesn't. I don't know what it is with Cleveland, because the Shador sexuals are so psychotic, and the media is in concert because it gives you clicks and more visibility, so they play along with the narrative. But then when I look at the football team, that's sort of like they're definitely showing a little bit of their poker hand, or hiding their poker hand, as they should be, which actually might show some smarts from the organization, which was really not known for that. Just saying. But yeah, the heartbeat from Boulder to Cleveland, definitely going to keep us entertained. We got a long ways till we get to OTAs, and we can start feeling football fever again. But guarantee you, between Boulder and Cleveland, there will be stories coming out to keep people like myself, or provide people like myself, talking points. All right, folks. We're ice cold chilling like a funky cold Medina. We'll be back momentarily. Okay, welcome back to the Foxhole. Faithful host Ken Harlan here, coming to you from Eagle's Nest to Studio B. A terrific Tuesday. A little overcast. Still 60, so we'll take that. Means a little more warmer days ahead as we escape winter and head to spring. Always an adventure when you're up here in the Northwest. Yeah. Okay. So what are we up to now? Let's call this the Twilight Zone. When I looked at the outline I put together, when I was in a hurry, and I looked out at Reddick, and I'm like, what am I talking about, Jay? No, we're talking about Tyler Reddick. But isn't it just interesting? And I know that people are out there always trying to get engagement. But with Tyler Reddick winning the first 3 races of the NASCAR season, and I'm just talked to the corner man, we will have him here soon. Maybe as soon as this weekend. With Tyler Reddick winning the first 3 races of the season, which has never been done in the NASCAR circuit, and this is going back a ways for those of you who don't know that. Those of you who do, it's still like, yeah, the odds still don't favor him dominating. But how folks have just sort of made this into another way to do their RHBA thing. It's like pennies from heaven for this crowd. It's truly pennies from heaven. You have Jordan. I mean, the fact that NBC suckered us into believing, and now Michael Jordan about to become the face of NASCAR. And all these people are always pushing these narratives because, there are folks who are like, well, Jordan, and all of a sudden, they're like the same idiots that claimed Colorado way back when they were making up a splash before they got exposed. This is even when they were in the Pac-12. They're black. Colorado has become Black America's team, and now Black Americans are gonna flood the NASCAR. Stop it. There's always gonna be Jordan sexuals. In fact, I was like watching Whitlock's show, and I think two of the guys he were talking to, and it was that Scap guy. He said he was admittedly a Jordan sexual. And for someone like that to say, yeah, it's cool, but doesn't mean I want to start watching NASCAR. I mean, I get the folks down there, and people are like, well, brothers are in the NASCAR. Bullshit. Plenty of brothers in the South. That's why you got guys like Brad Doherty and other lesser folks involved. Y'all just didn't care until Jordan came into the picture. And this idea, like, yeah, Jordan showing his greatness. And I'll say it once, I'll say it again, and I'll keep saying it. But what about when he was with the Bobcats and the Wizards? Don't tell me everything he does turns to gold. A lot of things that he does, we get that. But this idea that he's going to save a sport that really has lost its, I mean, it lost its groove. And we'll talk with the corner man this weekend about it. Every time we get together and do our little review of motorsports, I'm always ask him that question because it always goes back to that faithful day in 2001 when the great Intimidator, departed us. The sport's never been the same. And the idea that somehow, because Jordan and Tyler Reddick and Bubba Wallace are going to have a bunch of rainbow-colored warriors being NASCAR aficionados, saying left turn, British Petroleum. Okay? But it is interesting, though, because hearing these debates made me think about OJ. And had OJ not been the murderous fool that he ended up being, and then later jacking his shit, trying to get his shit that was jacked back, and doing a 9-year stint up there in, Lovelock in Nevada. Before all of that, it is interesting about that era especially, and this is before, people had to like represent the culture and hip hop became predominant and there was, that weird symbiotic partnership that developed between sports and that form of popular culture. What's interesting about these guys and why they're so big and they're still iconic because they transcended race. They had no color. And I know people are like saying, oh, they catered to the white world. No, the white world catered to them because they were enthralled. It's not that many people that I can say, and I've been around for a few minutes, that sort of have that about them, where they truly transcend race, become colorless. It ain't no Uncle Tom bullshit. People who say that kind of stuff are weak anyways. But because everybody can be who they want to be. This idea, yeah, there might be somebody playing step and fetch it, but you don't really see that. It's more of just, people in the RHBA or their more militant counterparts, which are in, the VSA, right? I'm sure you can figure out what that means. See? Yep. But, it is interesting because you have to wonder. And this is the point I want to get to. I know the train gets off the tracks here sometimes. But, when I say OJ, MJ, I think about Tiger, Capital Nation Tiger, is the success that Jordan's having. Could it have a Tiger Woods-like effect? And people said correctly, well, if he was driving the damn car, but the fact that he's an owner, and nobody really gravitates to the sport because of an owner. And believe me, as a big Commander/Redskins fan, we all think the world of Joe Gibbs. And if you know about NASCAR, Joe Gibbs has been a successful owner for Joe Gibbs Racing. But I don't know a lot of Commanders fans They're just sitting there like, oh man, I'd never miss a race because of Coach Gibbs. So yeah, I think the momentum of winning the court case in 2311 and getting off to a historic start, sure. In that same way, like Colorado, it's just like, hey, we're such a bored society, and so when you have something that we can latch on to and be part of the hype, and believe me, there's lots of people out there who are looking for our clicks and engagements. Anyways, let me move off from that. No real talk here. With the World Baseball Classic upon us, this is a question I had in the middle of the night. Insomniac, always up at weird hours. I know you're sitting there thinking, well, you got to come up with these topics somewhere, or these bullet points. And there's all this talk, about the NBA needing a face. And I brought this up, I think, in the last episode of Fox Running in the Foxhole, or maybe it was the last episode of this, part of the scenery. But it made me think. You don't want it to be Nikola, the Joker. You don't want it to be Luka, because he's foreign. You don't really want it to be SGA. You might have to give it up for Wemby. But in general, there's this reluctance for foreigners to be the face of the game. But it seems like we have no problems when it comes to Shohei being the face of MLB and basically baseball. If there's a Mr. Baseball, and the idea that we could actually mention him in the great Babe Ruth, the king of crash, the sultan of SWAT, in the same sentence, and it not create a massive war between the old guard and this new guard, as far as baseball fans and all the folks that do all the number crunching. But I think it's universally accepted. And I always wonder, when it comes to the talking heads and how they don't have a problem with Shohei and some of the other folks from Asia who are on their way to dominating. But you have a problem with these other Europeans kind of being the face of the NBA. It's kind of one of those, make it make sense for me somehow. Okay, let me see here. One more in this segment before we get to the parting shots and salty exits and get you out of here. And what is going on? And I've brought this up several times, and I'm sure this isn't the last time you'll hear me bring it up. But AI and this ongoing dark bullshit with all the sports figures. I mean, geez, so many times, and now you exploit it. Like I saw this thing, okay, I forget the kid's name. He played at LSU with a lot of these badasses who are now making it happen on Sunday, and he passed away tragically from cancer. And I'm seeing all these posts of all these teams he never played for. And I'm thinking, the point? What's the point? It's like there was the Saints, the Commanders. I'm like, he didn't play for us. He didn't play, because you go fact check half of this stuff. But I don't get the point other than the clicks, and I guess, obviously we don't have that kind of engagement here yet, where, we're going to stoop low to get clicks for, whatever financial inducements are there. But gee whiz, I've said it before. This is why your ass is on trial, Zuckerberg. You got all kinds of bullshit like this. It's bad. I've said before. Yeah, what kind of detrimental effect is this having? On the people, their relatives, people close to them, and even, after they are gone, and it's just all this phony stuff that's out there. And like I said, it just cracks me up that at least once or twice a week, there'll be somebody who just played for the Ducks, who they'd kill off. And you go look it up, and the guy's still living, about to play in the UFL or something like that. And I'm sitting there like, wow, is this somebody that's being a D-bag? Or is AI that whacked up already creating its own stuff to drive us up the wall? You tell me. FTINFX@gmail.com. Call the hotline 541-525-0896. Let me know what you think, because I'm at a loss as far as that goes, and that's why we called this segment The Twilight Zone. Okay, folks, we will be back momentarily with our parting shots and possible salty takes to get you out of here on this terrific Tuesday. See you momentarily. All right, then. Welcome back to the Foxhole. AfterShoX, Season 2 premiere, Episode 33. Coming to you on a terrific Tuesday. Looking forward to some NBA action tonight. Of course, we're not too happy about the 8 o'clock game, Pacific time. What is that? The Suns and the Terrible Kings? Yeah. NBC Peacock ain't too happy about that. This is where you gotta somehow try to flex it. Flip it over to a 7:30 game that's going on. Okay. So let's do some parting shots and salty takes. Shall we? Obviously, there's some pretty intense stuff going on globally. Have been for the last couple of weeks. And there's major sporting events that have an international flair to it. Obviously, the World Baseball Classic about to start. Clearly, as we spoke about earlier, and why I'm repping my USA soccer jacket. So we're trying not to hit the tripod. So if you see it being a little bit wobbly here. The World Cup coming to the U.S. in 100 days with what's going on over in Iran. Clearly, the uncertainty after El Mencho got iced, you gotta wonder about some of these major sporting events. We've already heard, Iran maybe pulling out, nations talking boycott this, and Iran pulling out of the World Cup. And then, if there's real rock and roll stuff, not that there isn't real rock and roll stuff, but let's just say if we get the rock opera going on and global travel is disrupted, and we spoke about some of the passport hassles that are already developing for the World Baseball Classic that's coming up. Yeah. Let's just put it this way. The complicated world is about to get even more of a pain in the ass, as we like to talk about on the SJ Gets Down podcast. I know. She needs to drop some new content. Hopefully soon. I don't know. Are we heading towards a nightmare here? My question is, I'm leaning towards that, but I want to be optimistic and not be one of these gloom and doomsayers. But just given the way everything else is rolling, I don't see how it can't be a major clusterfuck as far as the World Cup is concerned. Yeah. The Olympics being over. And finally, maybe because we are kind of in a conflict right now, that the whole fight over the hockey teams It's cool that they did Saturday Night Live, the men and the women. There's no animosity there. I think many people were very correct to point out that this is more of a media creation in terms of getting people angry. I mean, they tried to set the table throughout the Olympics by trying to ask these athletes dumb questions and really giving platforms for these activist types to go out and make asses of themselves, in my opinion. Get me all you want. Because I saw a lot of that stuff, and, hey, we don't like to take sides here. But as General Andre says, when you're doing stupid shit, somebody's got to call you out for it. And I thought a lot of that was. And I thought the media drove a lot of it during the Olympics. But whatever. But I just sit there and wonder, when it comes to some of these people, like our buddy Megan R. and her buddy Sue Bird, you always have to be angry all the time. I'm not here sitting here trying to muzzle you. We don't do that up in this bitch. But this whole angry message and trying to act tough and throw down when we know you're really soft as Charmin when it comes to truly being hard. And don't tell me about the sacrifices they made in training in the blood and sweat. No, I'm talking about really being hard. And don't get that. Don't go there, people. You all know what I'm talking about. It's just this fake tough guy shit or tough girl shit. It's just nauseating. When it's so unnecessary. I mean, there's moments in this gendered battle for pay and access and play. Yeah, you can go to the mattresses. But I think when you're talking about country, especially one that subsidized you to live way above the most of us, give it a rest. Or should we have to say, British Petroleum. And people get mad because Pat McAfee picked up the tab for the men's team when they were celebrating down in Florida after the Olympics and screaming about it for a week. I mean, what the fuck is wrong with you people? Do you have to be that angry all the freaking time? Okay, me talking about the World Baseball Classic. Can't wait to watch some of the previews. Probably be doing that while I'm editing tonight. Will be a hell of a lot better than that King Suns game, I'm pretty sure. MLS and MLB connected to big international sporting events. Obviously, the World Cup, World Baseball Classic. MLB and its uptick is going to take advantage of it. But I always wonder about MLS. And I bring this up because obviously last week you had Inter Miami and LAFC. This week you had Inter Miami and Orlando, the Florida Derby. And it's not on Fox. Fox decides when they're going to have a game a little bit later, San Diego. San Diego's a fine product. But are you kidding me? If it's all about pumping up the World Cup, you tell Apple, no, I need some of these messy games. You show the same game on your platform anyways. I don't understand not making it more accessible and making people who don't have an Apple subscription possibly yeah, okay, I want some of this action. Because, Inter Miami was staring down an 0-2 start before Messi and crew got off the canvas and hit Orlando City with a couple of haymakers to come away with a stunning 4-2 victory. And I'm looking at Garber and the powers that be. This is the World Cup year. You want to do everything to get a bounce for the league moving forward. You only get to host a World Cup every so often. And the opportunities that can come with this at a time that's really vital for the sport in this country. Yeah. What else do we got here? The Kings and the Rangers, and why the NHL is only a blip on the radar. My Kings, go Kings, go. There are our Kings, is those in the foxhole world that like the LA Kings. Fire the coach, Mr. Hiller. And I was sitting there thinking about this. The Rangers and the Kings, kind of insignificant. When I always talk about doing the ice rink, I mean, getting on the Zamboni and taking a spin around the ice rink of life, doing the power rankings they do on Foxtrot and the Foxhole, go through. I don't do the power rankings, but I'm always keeping an eye because we don't have an NHL correspondent because none of y'all want to step up and be that. But I'm like, when I go to the power rankings, the Kings nowhere to be found. It'd be kind of a joke. And the Rangers, 1994 has been a while. And I think those two teams not being a factor is kind of why the NHL doesn't really move the needle like it used to. Chicago not making the playoffs in a while. Not to mention the Canadian team's never winning. But I think about LA as far as the Kings and the Rangers. I guess the Islanders. But the Islanders, that's Twilight. Just makes you wonder, right? I mean, maybe devaluing will get too much. I don't think so. Once again, you tell me. FTINFX at gmail.com. Drop me a line. Or call and leave a message on our hotline. 541-525-0896. Love to hear from you. Okay, let's do some real talk here, man. The Combine in Indianapolis wrapped up this past week. And we got to see the vertical jumps and people running their 40s and people bitching and complaining about not caring or not having to go to Indianapolis. Other people talking about that it's centrally located, it's easy to get to. I get the Combine as a necessary evil. But as I've said on Foxtrot and the Foxhole, probably every year, this type of year, unless, you need that Narcan shot I was talking about early, who cares? In the end, it happens on Sunday. I don't care about what somebody can do. These drills that have nothing to do with whether or not they can man up on Sunday and be a difference maker. It keeps people engaged, as we talked about earlier, football Narcan, a drug that we're addicted to 365, 24/7 when possible. And give college football and the NFL, give the evil empire its due, that they always find ways to try to engage us and keep us pacified with content. But the Combine, I was like watching Coach JB and Smitty, and they were going off on one of their rants about Fernando Mendoza not throwing at the Combine. And this is one more example of an entitled motherfucker that thinks he's too good to actually have to show his wares. And I thought to myself, if he, in a draft full of questionable quarterbacks, especially now that somehow Ty Simpson in his 15 starts that nobody really believed after Indiana boat raced them in this year's CFP, why would you throw? Why would you do anything? Because it's still going to come down to whether you can play on Sunday or not. You'll get a contract, but you won't be in the league. You'll be another, what's that kid who played for USC? Josh Rosen. We don't want these guys out of the effing league, or Matt Leiter out of the league before your time was. As simple as that. You get paid once, Cool with your rookie contract, have your moment in the sun, but either you're gonna make it happen on Sunday, within your first 3 years, or right now, probably a year and a half, ask JJ McCarthy, or your ass be gone. And so I just, I was like wondering, like, why are you guys so cranky with Mendoza? Okay, he does have a little bit of that Tim Tebow, oh golly gee whiz about him, but is that a bad thing? At least he's not some fucking thug, rapist, baby making fool. Now, could be worse things you could bring into this league as far as character and what they bring to the table. Hey, if you do all those other things in ball, it's all good. And it is. And it has been for a while. And I ain't lying about that. Yeah. But I just feel we're going to get inundated with it. They're talking about bringing the combine on the road, and that's cool, I guess. Like the draft. Give cities full of football addicts a moment to bask in the offseason and have a party and get together and rub elbows and get on with their idolatry and all that good stuff. Okay, fine. But I think if you're sensible, you should never give a rat's ass about the combine. And even if it's on TV, I can appreciate the Will Bonds and other folks that say, I didn't watch a second of it. And I don't blame you. I haven't watched a second of it in years. And I would probably feel insulted if I did. Okay, folks. We're off and running for season 2. I think we're going to have the corner man. So we'll probably have 2 episodes next week. I'm excited about that. Keep an eye out for episode 304 of Foxtrot and a Foxhole. Like I said earlier, we'll drop that on Friday. Hoping to get with SJ so we can get some SJ Gets Down content. I've got a feeling we're going to see some scene stuff sooner than later, but yeah, when we're ready to drop that, you'll definitely be the first to know. Subscribe and like. Very important. FTI and FX Media's YouTube channel so we can help with the algorithm. In the meantime, as we always say, stay safe, stay sane, avoid the bracelets, enjoy plenty of adult beverages, have a good time, always do it with a smile on your face, and we will see you pretty damn soon. Peace, y'all.